Sálvame de las vías, seré tu esposa y haré todo lo que quieras, dijo la comanche al ranchero. The wind moved through the tall grasses, carrying a dry, dusty smell that reminded everyone of the harshness of life in this land. Far from the comforts of any town or city, the frontier stretched endlessly, wild and unforgiving. In this land, survival was never guaranteed, and every day was a test of courage and willpower. A young Comanche woman walked cautiously near the railway tracks that had recently been built through the plains. Her long hair, dark and glossy, was tangled from days of travel, and her clothes, once vibrant, were now faded and worn. She had been captured during a violent raid that had separated her from her people. The memory of her family and tribe haunted her, and she clutched a small piece of fabric that reminded her of home. It was her only connection to the life she had lost. The woman's eyes scanned the horizon constantly. She had learned to be alert from a young age. In the Comanche way of life, danger could come from any direction: wild animals, other tribes, or settlers who claimed land that had always belonged to her people. Today, however, the danger she faced was different. She had been taken far from her homeland, far from anyone who would understand her language or respect her ways. The railway tracks beneath her feet symbolized the intrusion of a new world, machines and men she could not control, rules she could not follow, and threats she had never known. As she moved closer to the tracks, she saw the rancher for the first time. He was tall and strong, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his face. His eyes were sharp, scanning the landscape as if he was expecting something or someone. He carried himself with authority, and his presence made the woman feel both fear and curiosity. He was not a man she could easily trick, nor was he someone who seemed easily moved by words. Yet she knew that her life depended on her next actions. The woman paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. Her heart beat rapidly in her chest, each thump reminding her of the fragile thread that connected her to life. She thought of the stories her mother had told her as a child, stories of brave women who had survived impossible situations by using their wits and courage. Now it was her turn to be brave. She had no choice but to act, to find a way to convince this man that her life was worth sparing. The rancher noticed her hesitation and took a few steps toward her. His expression was unreadable. He had lived in this land for many years, witnessing conflicts between settlers and tribes. He knew the dangers, the losses, and the harsh reality of frontier life. Yet he also saw something in the young woman, a flicker of determination, a spark that refused to be extinguished. He did not know what she would do next, but he knew she would do something bold, something desperate. Suddenly, the woman stepped forward, her voice clear and steady despite the fear twisting inside her. "Sálvame de las vías," she said, her words carrying a mix of desperation and determination. "Save me from the tracks. I will do whatever you want. I will be your companion and I will follow your rules." The rancher froze. He had expected fear, pleading, maybe even silence, but not this. The words surprised him, not because they were strange, but because they were spoken with confidence. She was offering her life in exchange for safety, not begging for pity but showing courage. Her gaze met his, unflinching, and for the first time in many years he felt a strange sense of respect for someone he had just met. Around them, the wind whispered through the grasses, carrying the tension of the moment. Birds flew overhead, their cries echoing in the distance. The woman's mind raced as she waited for his response. She had made a gamble, risking everything on her words, and now she had to trust that he would see her courage and intelligence, not just her vulnerability. The rancher studied her carefully. He could see that she was strong, not just in body but in spirit. Life in this land had taught him that strength could take many forms. Some showed it through weapons or skill with horses, others through resilience and quick thinking. This woman, though alone and far from home, had chosen to show her strength in a way that few could. He spoke finally, his voice calm but firm. If you can survive here, if you can follow the rules and learn, then you may have a chance, he said. But know this, life on this land is not easy. One wrong step and it can end quickly. The woman nodded. She understood the warning, but fear had been replaced by determination. She knew that she had no other choice. To survive, she would have to adapt, to learn quickly, and to be smart. Every movement, every word, every thought had to be calculated. She had lived through hardship before, and she would do it again. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, the woman followed the rancher toward his home. Each step felt heavy, not just from the miles she had traveled, but from the weight of uncertainty. She did not know what awaited her at the ranch, whether she would find safety or whether new dangers would emerge. Yet with each step, she reminded herself of the promise she had made, to survive, to adapt, and to keep the spark of hope alive. The landscape around them was wide and open, stretching as far as the eye could see. Rolling hills, scattered trees, and the faint line of the railway tracks reminded her of both freedom and captivity. She realized that her life had changed forever in a single moment, on a narrow strip of land between danger and safety. How she would live the days ahead depended entirely on her courage, her wit, and her ability to navigate the world of strangers. By the time they reached the outskirts of the ranch, the woman felt a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. She had survived the first test, facing the tracks, facing the rancher, and speaking her truth. Now, a new chapter was beginning. One that would challenge her in ways she could not yet imagine, but also one that held the possibility of learning, growth, and perhaps even trust. The rancher stopped and looked at her. "You will need to work hard," he said. "Life here is not kind. But if you are willing, you may find a way to live with us." The woman's lips curved into a small, determined smile. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing: she would fight to survive, to remain true to herself, and to find a place in a world that had once seemed so foreign and threatening. And as she followed him into the ranch, her heart held a quiet hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this was the beginning of a new life, a life where courage and determination could make all the difference. The wind continued to blow, carrying with it the dust of the plains, the sound of distant horses, and the unspoken promise of survival. For the young Comanche woman, the day had begun with fear and uncertainty, but it would continue with hope and a determination stronger than she had ever known. The journey ahead would be difficult, but she was ready to face it, one step at a time, in a land that tested the limits of both body and spirit. The Comanche woman spent her first night at the ranch in a small, modest room near the main house. The walls were rough-hewn wood, and the air smelled faintly of smoke and dust. She lay on a thin mattress, staring at the ceiling as shadows of the flickering lamp danced across the walls. Sleep was difficult to find, for her mind was full of fear, questions, and plans. She thought about the moment on the railway tracks, the words she had spoken, and the man who had decided to spare her life. She wondered what he expected of her, what rules she would have to follow, and whether she could truly survive in this strange new world. As the sun rose, she heard the sounds of the ranch coming to life. Horses neighed, chickens clucked, and the distant sound of a hammer striking wood echoed from the barn. The rhythm of the ranch was new to her, and she found herself both fascinated and overwhelmed. She had grown up in the open plains, moving with her family and tribe, living by the seasons and the land. Here, everything was different. There were fences, buildings, animals cared for in ways she had never seen, and people with strict routines. The rancher entered her room quietly, careful not to startle her. "It's time to begin," he said. His voice was firm but not unkind. "There is work to do, and you will need to learn quickly. I will guide you, but you must follow instructions. Do you understand?" The woman nodded, swallowing the nervous lump in her throat. She had spent her life learning to listen, to adapt, and to survive. She would do so now, even if it meant facing new fears and challenges every day. She dressed quickly in the simple clothing provided to her and followed him outside. The sunlight was bright, and the ranch stretched out before her like a small world of its own, with barns, fields, and grazing animals. Her first task was to help with the horses. She approached a brown mare cautiously, remembering how she had handled horses as a child. She extended her hand slowly, speaking softly. The mare watched her with calm eyes, and soon she was brushing its coat, feeling the warmth of its body beneath her fingers. The rancher watched silently, nodding slightly. "Good," he said. "Patience and gentleness will take you far." Throughout the day, she was introduced to more tasks, feeding the chickens, gathering eggs, helping to repair fences, and learning the rhythms of the land. Each task seemed simple, but she quickly realized that life here was demanding in ways she had not expected. Every moment required attention, every action mattered, and mistakes could have consequences not only for her, but for the ranch as a whole. During a short break, she sat under a large oak tree, wiping sweat from her forehead. The rancher approached and sat beside her, a rare moment of quiet between the busyness of the day. "You are stronger than you realize," he said. "Most people would have given up long before this. You survived the tracks and now you are surviving here. That shows courage." She looked at him, surprised by his words. She had expected harsh criticism, commands, or cold judgment, not recognition of her efforts. For a moment she felt a spark of something unfamiliar, pride. It was strange to feel proud for simply surviving, for doing what she had to do to live. Yet she could not deny the truth of his words. She had faced death, and she had chosen life. As days turned into weeks, the Comanche woman began to notice small changes within herself. Her body grew stronger from the constant work, her hands roughened from the tasks she performed, and her mind sharpened as she learned the routines and rules of the ranch. She began to understand the rhythm of the land, the best time to water the animals, the way the wind would shift before a storm, and how the soil felt beneath her feet. Slowly, the ranch became a place she could navigate with confidence, even if it would never feel like home in the way her tribe had been home. The rancher, too, observed changes. He had expected a frightened, helpless girl, but what he found instead was someone capable, intelligent, and resourceful. She asked questions, remembered instructions, and handled challenges with courage. He saw her not just as someone to protect, but as someone who could contribute, who could learn, and who could even teach him things he had never considered. The initial agreement between them began to evolve, not just a matter of survival, but a slow, mutual respect forming through shared experience. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in reds and purples, the woman found herself sitting near the barn, listening to the sounds of the animals settling for the night. She thought of her family, her people, and the land she had lost. The feeling of loss was sharp, but it no longer paralyzed her. She had begun to understand that survival was about more than escaping death. It was about finding ways to live fully, even in unexpected circumstances. That night, she dreamed of her homeland. She saw the wide plains, the rivers, and the hills where she had played as a child. She saw her family, smiling and strong. Yet in her dream, she also saw herself at the ranch, learning, growing, and becoming someone capable of facing challenges she had never imagined. The dream left her with a sense of hope, strange, fragile, but real. She realized that while she had been taken from her past, she could still shape her future. The days that followed were filled with small victories and quiet struggles. She learned to cook simple meals, mend clothes, and care for the animals with skill. She discovered that patience and persistence were just as important as strength. She also learned to read the expressions of the rancher, when he was pleased, when he was frustrated, and when he was testing her. Each day was a lesson, each moment a chance to prove herself not just as someone to survive, but as someone capable of respect and contribution. One afternoon, a challenge arose that tested her in a new way. A foal had been born in the barn that morning and it struggled to stand. The woman, remembering her knowledge of animals, carefully approached and offered her guidance. She steadied the foal, helping it find balance and take its first steps. The rancher watched, silently impressed. "You have a gift," he said softly. "Not everyone can do that. You have patience, care, and understanding. That will take you far." The woman smiled quietly, feeling a warmth in her chest. She had survived the first trials on the railway tracks, and now she was surviving here, in this world so different from the one she had known. Every challenge, every small success, gave her confidence. She began to believe that perhaps life could be more than just survival, that it could hold moments of accomplishment, respect, and even joy. By the end of the week, she had earned a place among the workers on the ranch. They respected her for her dedication and skill, though some still looked at her with curiosity, wondering about her past and her origins. She kept to herself mostly, speaking only when necessary, but slowly she began to understand the rhythm of human interaction here. Trust was built slowly, step by step, and she had already learned that it could not be forced. One evening, as she sat near the fire with the rancher, she reflected on how much had changed since the moment on the tracks. She had faced fear, risked everything, and found a way to survive. She had learned to work, to care, and to adapt. And yet, she knew that the journey was only beginning. The ranch was not her home, and the world around her was full of uncertainty. But she had survived the impossible before, and she could do it again. The rancher looked at her thoughtfully. "You have courage," he said, "but courage is not enough. You must learn, adapt, and choose carefully. Life is not always fair, and sometimes it will test you in ways you cannot imagine, but I believe you can face it." The woman nodded. She understood. Survival was not just about strength or speed, it was about wisdom, patience, and determination. She would face the days ahead with courage, just as she had faced the tracks and the rancher's decision. She would find a way to live fully, to protect herself, and perhaps, in time, to find a place in this world that had seemed so foreign and threatening. And so the Comanche woman continued her journey, step by step, learning, growing, and surviving. Each day was a test, each challenge an opportunity. She had faced death and fear before, and now she was learning the value of trust, respect, and hard work. The story of her survival was just beginning, and the days ahead promised both difficulty and hope, shaping her into someone stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever the frontier would demand. Weeks turned into months, and the Comanche woman became more familiar with the rhythms of the ranch. Every day was a new lesson, a new challenge, and a new chance to prove herself, not only to the rancher but to herself as well. She rose before the sun, helping with chores, feeding animals, repairing fences, and learning the small but vital details of ranch life. Her hands were calloused, her muscles strong, and her mind sharp. She had come to understand that survival was not just about courage, it was about patience, persistence, and careful observation. The rancher continued to watch her closely, sometimes silently, sometimes offering instruction. He had always expected hard work from anyone under his care, but he had not expected the Comanche woman to adapt so quickly, to ask questions, and to understand the subtleties of the land. Slowly, his respect for her grew. He saw that her strength was not only in her body but also in her mind and spirit. She thought quickly, acted decisively, and learned from mistakes without complaint. These qualities were rare, and he knew that they could be the difference between failure and success on a frontier as unforgiving as theirs. Life on the ranch, however, was not without challenges. One morning, after a night of heavy rain, she found that the barn's fence had collapsed in several places. Water had softened the ground, and some animals had escaped, wandering dangerously close to the railway tracks. Without hesitation, she grabbed tools and ran to help. The rancher had already started gathering the livestock, but her swift action prevented a serious accident. "You were quick," the rancher said as they worked side by side. Many would have panicked, but you handled it. She smiled faintly. I have learned that panic doesn't help anyone. Thinking and acting is what matters. It was not just the physical work that tested her. She had to navigate relationships, both with the rancher and with the other workers. Some were curious, others suspicious, and a few were openly skeptical of her presence. She noticed whispers and sideways glances but chose to respond with diligence and respect rather than anger. Slowly, she earned a reputation as dependable, capable, and intelligent. The respect she gained from others was quiet, earned not through words but through consistent action. One afternoon, while helping in the fields, she was approached by a young worker named Miguel. He had been on the ranch for several years and was known for his cautious nature. "You've done well here," he said, shading his eyes from the sun. "Not everyone could manage this place as you have. Most would have left by now." She looked at him, her dark eyes steady. "I cannot leave. I have nowhere else to go. But here I can learn, I can survive, and perhaps even find a way to make a life." Miguel nodded, understanding the unspoken truth. Life on the frontier was harsh. Few were lucky enough to find safety, and fewer still found purpose. The woman, despite her past and her distance from home, had carved a place for herself through resilience and courage. As the weeks passed, the Comanche woman began to take on responsibilities that went beyond simple chores. She learned to care for the sick animals, mend broken tools, and even organize the feeding schedule for the livestock. Each success strengthened her confidence, and she began to feel a sense of belonging, even if it was fragile and complicated. The rancher began to include her in decisions about the land. "The water levels in the stream are dropping," he said one morning. "We may need to adjust the irrigation and grazing schedule. What do you think?" She studied the stream and the surrounding fields carefully. "If we move the animals to the higher ground for now, it will prevent overgrazing, and we should check the wells to ensure there's enough water for the barn animals." The rancher nodded, impressed. "You have a good mind for this. Keep observing and learning. One day you might manage this place yourself." Her heart swelled with a mix of pride and determination. She realized that survival had become more than just avoiding danger. It was about learning, contributing, and building a life even in a place she had never imagined. Yet she also remembered the cost of her past, the family and tribe she had been separated from, the life she had lost. That memory never left her, but it no longer paralyzed her. Instead, it became a quiet motivation, a reminder of why she needed to endure and grow stronger. The Comanche woman also began to notice subtle changes in the rancher. At first, he had been stern, distant, and cautious. Now, he spoke to her with a measure of respect and patience, sometimes offering advice, sometimes merely observing and letting her learn through experience. She understood that trust was growing between them, slow and delicate but real. He was beginning to see her as more than someone he had saved. He saw her as a partner in survival, someone who could think, act, and make decisions. One day, a serious challenge arose. A wild coyote had entered the ranch, attacking the smaller animals in the barn. The Comanche woman reacted immediately, guiding the frightened chickens and goats to safety while the rancher chased the coyote away. Afterward, she checked each animal carefully, ensuring none were injured. The rancher watched her, a rare smile on his face. "You handled that well," he said. "Many would have panicked, but you stayed calm. That is strength." She realized that strength came in many forms, not just the ability to fight or endure, but the ability to stay calm, to think clearly, and to act decisively. She had learned that survival required not just courage, but wisdom. Each challenge on the ranch tested her in new ways, shaping her into someone stronger, more capable, and more resilient than she had ever imagined. Life on the ranch was not without moments of quiet reflection. Some nights she would sit outside under the stars, listening to the wind whisper through the trees. She would think of her homeland, of the plains, rivers and mountains she had known, and of the family she had lost. Though her heart ached, she began to understand that her past did not define her entirely. She had survived, she had learned, and she had adapted. The ranch, though foreign, had become a place where she could grow and find her own strength. The bond between her and the rancher continued to develop. They shared quiet moments, working side by side in the fields or tending to the animals. He began to trust her judgment, and she began to see him not just as a figure of authority, but as someone who respected her abilities and decisions. Slowly, the initial tension between them faded, replaced by a cautious, mutual understanding. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the Comanche woman and the rancher sat together near the barn. The air was warm and the sky glowed with colors of pink and gold. "You have changed," the rancher said quietly. "When I first met you, I did not know what to expect. Now I see strength, courage, and wisdom. You have earned your place here." She smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. "I have learned much," she said. "This place is difficult, but it has taught me how to survive, how to work, and how to trust. I will continue to learn no matter what comes." The rancher nodded, satisfied. "Life will continue to test you as it tests all of us, but I believe you are ready." The Comanche woman realized that survival was no longer just about escaping danger. It was about growth, learning, and finding a sense of purpose. She had begun to see that her strength lay not only in her past experiences, but in her ability to adapt, to work, and to connect with others. Life on the ranch had become a series of lessons, each teaching her something new about courage, patience, and trust. As the months passed, the Comanche woman became an indispensable part of the ranch. Her skills, intelligence, and determination earned her respect from the workers and trust from the rancher. She had transformed from a frightened girl near the railway tracks into a capable, confident woman. Yet she remained humble, understanding that life was full of challenges, and that each day required vigilance, effort, and resilience. The rancher, too, was changing. He had learned that strength came in many forms and that respect was earned through action, wisdom, and courage. The Comanche woman had taught him to see beyond appearances, to value determination and intelligence, and to understand that trust could grow even in the most unexpected circumstances. And so, life on the ranch continued, a delicate balance of work, learning, and adaptation. The Comanche woman faced each day with courage, patience, and determination, knowing that every challenge was an opportunity to grow stronger. She had survived the railway tracks, adapted to a new world, and found a way to make life meaningful in a place that had once seemed so foreign and unforgiving. In the quiet moments, under the vast sky of the plains, she reflected on her journey. She realized that survival was more than escaping danger. It was about learning, growing, and finding strength in unexpected places. And as she looked toward the future, she understood that her journey was far from over. Life on the ranch had given her a chance not just to live, but to thrive, to learn, and to shape her own destiny. The months on the ranch had slowly changed the Comanche woman. She no longer walked with hesitation or fear. Her hands were strong, her mind alert, and her spirit resilient. Life on the ranch had tested her in countless ways, through long days of work, sudden challenges with animals, and learning the unspoken rules of human interaction in a place so different from the life she had known. She had faced fear before, but now she faced responsibility, and it demanded a different kind of courage. One morning, as the first light of day touched the fields, the rancher approached her. "We have a problem," he said, his voice calm but serious. "The northern fence was damaged during the storm last night, and some cattle have wandered off. We need to bring them back before the sun climbs too high." The woman nodded immediately, understanding the urgency. She had learned quickly that the ranch was a living system. Everything depended on attention and care. Animals could not be ignored, the land could not be neglected, and even small mistakes could grow into big problems. Without hesitation, she grabbed a rope and ran toward the northern pasture. The wind carried the smell of wet earth and grass, and she felt alive in a way that was both exhausting and exhilarating. The scattered cattle were nervous, some grazing far from the others. The woman moved carefully among them, using a calm voice and measured movements. She had learned that fear was contagious, not just in humans but in animals too. If she showed panic or impatience, the animals would scatter further. But she moved with quiet authority, guiding them toward the safer pastures. The rancher joined her, and together they worked to gather the herd. It was physically demanding, and their movements had to be coordinated. She noticed how the rancher watched her, not just as someone helping with work, but as someone capable of leadership and quick decision-making. They did not need many words, their actions spoke louder. And by the time the sun rose higher in the sky, the herd was safely back behind the repaired fence. "That was well done," the rancher said as they rested for a moment under the shade of a tree. "I didn't have to intervene because you handled it all." That shows true understanding and skill. She felt a quiet pride. She had always known the value of courage, but now she was learning the value of knowledge, patience, and foresight. Survival was no longer just about reacting to danger. It was about understanding the land, the animals, and the people around her. She had grown in ways she had never imagined, and each success reinforced her confidence. Life on the ranch also began to show her the importance of community and trust. The other workers who had once been wary or indifferent now sought her advice and assistance. They trusted her judgment and respected her work ethic. Some shared stories of their own struggles, and she began to understand that everyone carried burdens, fears, and hopes. Life was not easy for anyone, but the difference was how people responded to challenges. The Comanche woman also began to see the softer side of the rancher. While he had always been firm and disciplined, she noticed moments of care and attention that few outsiders would see. He remembered small details about the animals. He noticed when someone was struggling, and he occasionally offered quiet words of encouragement. She realized that strength was not only about authority, but also about responsibility and empathy. One afternoon, while repairing a section of fence with the rancher, a stray calf broke through the barrier again. The woman ran ahead, coaxing it gently, using everything she had learned about patience and control. The calf eventually returned to the herd, and the rancher shook his head with a small laugh. "You have a way with them," he said. "Not everyone could manage this. You've earned respect here, not just from me but from everyone who works this land." She smiled quietly, understanding the deeper meaning of his words. Respect was not given freely. It had to be earned through action, patience, and integrity. She had begun to see herself not just as a survivor, but as someone capable of earning trust, influencing outcomes, and contributing meaningfully to a community that had once been entirely foreign to her. As weeks turned into months, the Comanche woman also began to notice her own emotional growth. The fear and trauma of her past did not disappear, but they no longer controlled her. She had learned to channel her experiences into strength and insight. She knew when to act, when to observe, and when to speak. She had developed a quiet confidence, grounded in experience rather than words, that allowed her to navigate challenges with grace. The rancher, in turn, had begun to rely on her for more than just physical work. He sought her perspective on decisions about the land, the livestock, and even minor disputes among workers. He valued her intelligence, her patience, and her careful judgment. Their relationship had evolved into one of mutual respect, built slowly through shared experiences, challenges, and successes. Neither took the other for granted, and both had learned the value of trust. One evening, after a long day of work, the woman sat outside under the stars, listening to the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. She thought about how much she had changed since the day she had first spoken her desperate plea on the railway tracks. She had survived fear, adapted to a new world, and earned a place in a community that had once been unknown to her. She felt a sense of accomplishment, but also an awareness that life would continue to test her in new ways. The rancher joined her quietly, sitting a short distance away. "You have grown," he said softly. "When you arrived, I didn't know what to expect. Now I see a woman who can handle the land, the animals, and the people. You've proven yourself, and you continue to do so every day." She nodded, feeling the weight and truth of his words. It was not flattery, it was recognition of her effort, her courage, and her resilience. She realized that her survival had become more than just avoiding danger. It had become about growth, contribution, and finding a place in a world that had once seemed impossible to navigate. The Comanche woman also began to think about her future. The ranch had become a place of learning and opportunity, but she knew that her path would continue to challenge her. She wanted to grow stronger, to learn more, and perhaps even to teach others what she had learned. She understood that life was not about comfort, but about action, courage, and perseverance. Over time, the woman and the rancher faced challenges that tested their trust and cooperation. Storms threatened the crops, wild animals threatened the livestock, and occasionally outsiders came with intentions that could harm the ranch. Each time, they worked together, combining their knowledge, skill, and courage to protect what they had built. Their partnership deepened, founded on respect, shared experience, and a recognition of each other's strengths. Despite the difficulties, life on the ranch had also given the woman moments of joy and peace. She found satisfaction in small accomplishments, the health of the animals, the repair of a fence, or the successful completion of a day's work. She also began to enjoy moments of quiet companionship with the rancher, sharing conversations, laughter, and reflections on the day. These moments were rare, but they reminded her that life could hold beauty even in hardship. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky with deep reds and purples, the woman realized how far she had come. She remembered the fear she had felt on the railway tracks, the uncertainty of her first days at the ranch, and the loneliness that had once seemed overwhelming. Now, she had strength, skill, and a place in a community that recognized her value. She had survived, adapted, and grown in ways she had never imagined. The rancher watched her quietly, noting the calm confidence in her movements and the quiet determination in her eyes. "You have come a long way," he said. "I am proud of what you have achieved." "Not many could have done what you have done." She smiled faintly, feeling a mixture of gratitude and pride. "I have learned that strength is not just about surviving," she said. "It is about patience, understanding, and the courage to keep learning. Life is not easy, but it can be meaningful if we choose to grow from each challenge." The rancher nodded, satisfied. "You have learned well," he said, "and I believe that the lessons you have learned here will guide you for the rest of your life." As night fell and the ranch grew quiet, the Comanche woman reflected on her journey. She had faced fear, danger, and uncertainty, but she had also found strength, knowledge, and respect. She had transformed from a frightened girl near the railway tracks into a capable, confident woman ready to face whatever challenges the future might bring. She understood now that survival was not only about avoiding danger, but about learning, growing, and building trust. Life on the ranch had shown her the value of hard work, patience, and resilience. It had taught her the importance of cooperation, respect, and courage. And as she looked up at the stars, she realized that her journey was far from over. The days ahead would hold new tests, new lessons, and new opportunities, but she felt ready to face them with determination, wisdom, and the quiet strength that had carried her this far. The years on the ranch had changed the Comanche woman in ways she had never imagined. She had arrived frightened, alone, and uncertain of her future. The world around her had seemed harsh, unforgiving, and impossible to navigate. but through courage, patience, and determination, she had learned to survive, to adapt, and to grow. The land that had once seemed so foreign had become a place where she could contribute, learn, and even feel a sense of belonging. By now, she was known throughout the ranch as someone dependable, strong, and intelligent. Her hands were calloused from years of hard work, her muscles toned from constant activity, and her mind sharp from observing the land, the animals, and the people around her. Every challenge she had faced, storm-damaged fences, lost cattle, sick animals, and occasional conflicts among the workers, had taught her something new. She had learned to respond with calm, to plan carefully, and to act decisively. Survival had become more than avoiding danger. It had become about growth, resilience, and understanding the world around her. The rancher had also changed. He had come to value her not only for her skill and diligence, but for her wisdom, patience, and courage. Their relationship had evolved into one of mutual respect and understanding. He trusted her judgment, relied on her insight, and recognized the strength she had built through years of challenges. The partnership they had formed was quiet but profound, a bond forged in shared struggle, trust, and endurance. One morning, as the sun rose over the plains, the rancher approached her. "The market needs more animals this week," he said. "We have to prepare the herd and ensure everything is in order. Can I count on you to oversee the preparations?" She nodded, already thinking through the tasks ahead. "I will organize the feeding and check each animal," she said. "The fences and barns are ready, and I will make sure nothing is overlooked." The rancher smiled faintly, a rare expression that showed his appreciation. "I knew I could trust you," he said. "You have proven yourself time and again. Let's get started." She moved through the ranch with quiet confidence, giving instructions where needed, checking on animals, and ensuring everything was in order. Workers looked to her for guidance, and she responded calmly and respectfully, using the skills and experience she had gained over the years. The work was demanding, but she welcomed it. Every task, no matter how small, was a way to continue learning, growing, and demonstrating her capabilities. As the day wore on, a small group of workers gathered to discuss the upcoming market trip. The Comanche woman listened carefully, offering insights about which animals would be most suitable for sale, how to arrange transportation, and how to keep the herd calm. Her suggestions were practical, thoughtful, and well received. She realized that she was no longer just surviving on the ranch, she was contributing, leading, and making decisions that affected the livelihood of everyone. The rancher watched her quietly, a sense of pride in his eyes. "You have become indispensable," he said later that evening. "I have relied on many people over the years, but few have your combination of skill, intelligence, and patience. You have earned your place here." She smiled faintly, reflecting on the long journey that had brought her to this point. She thought of the railway tracks, the fear she had felt, and the desperate words she had spoken to save her life. She remembered how uncertain everything had seemed, how alone she had felt, and how much she had had to learn. And yet, through perseverance and courage, she had transformed her life. She had gone from a frightened girl to a confident, capable woman who could face the challenges of the ranch and the frontier with skill and determination. The days that followed continued to test her in different ways. A sudden storm threatened to flood the lower pastures, and she worked tirelessly alongside the rancher and the workers to secure the animals and protect the land. Each challenge reminded her of the value of preparation, quick thinking, and calm action. She had learned that strength was not only physical, but also mental and emotional. The ability to stay calm under pressure, to plan ahead, and to act decisively was just as important as endurance or skill. At night, she often sat quietly, watching the stars, reflecting on her journey and thinking about her homeland. The memories of her family, her tribe, and the wide plains of her youth remained vivid. Though she had been taken far from her home, She had found a way to survive and thrive in a place that had once seemed impossible to navigate. She realized that her life was no longer defined solely by the past, but also by the choices she had made, the skills she had gained, and the trust she had built. The relationship between her and the rancher had deepened in ways that went beyond words. While respect and trust formed the foundation, they had also begun to understand each other on a personal level. Quiet conversations by the fire, shared work in the fields, and mutual reliance in times of challenge had created a bond that neither could ignore. It was a bond built on experience, understanding, and the recognition of each other's strengths. One afternoon, a group of traders arrived at the ranch, interested in purchasing livestock. The Comanche woman took charge of preparing the herd, organizing the animals, and ensuring that everything was ready for inspection. Her calm authority and attention to detail impressed the traders, and the rancher watched proudly as she managed the entire process with skill and confidence. It was a clear demonstration of how far she had come, from a frightened girl pleading for her life to a capable woman commanding respect and admiration. As the traders departed, satisfied with their purchase, the woman and the rancher walked together across the fields. The wind carried the scent of grass and earth, and the sky glowed with the soft light of the setting sun. "You have come far," the rancher said quietly. "When you arrived, I never knew what to expect. Now I see someone who has not only survived but grown stronger, wiser, and capable of shaping her own destiny." She nodded, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. "I have learned that life is not just about surviving," she said. "It is about learning, growing, and finding a place where we can contribute. Every challenge has taught me something valuable, and every success has shown me that courage and perseverance can change our path." The rancher paused, looking at her with a thoughtful expression. "You have taught me as well," he said. "You have shown me that strength comes in many forms, through patience, understanding, and quiet determination. I respect what you have achieved and the person you have become." The Comanche woman felt a quiet warmth in her chest. For the first time, she felt a sense of closure regarding the fear and uncertainty that had once dominated her life. She had faced danger, adapted to a new world, and built a life filled with respect, trust, and accomplishment. She had proven to herself that even in the most difficult circumstances, it was possible to survive and thrive. The days continued with hard work, shared responsibilities, and moments of reflection. She found joy in small successes, the health of the animals, the smooth operation of the ranch, and the trust she had earned from the rancher and workers. Each day was a reminder that her efforts mattered and that she had the ability to shape the world around her. One evening, as the ranch settled into quiet and the last light of the sun faded, the woman stood on a hill overlooking the fields. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, the fear, the uncertainty, and the desperate plea on the railway tracks. She realized that her life had been transformed not by luck alone, but by courage, determination, and the willingness to adapt and grow. The rancher joined her silently, standing beside her as they looked out across the land. "You have changed this place as much as it has changed you," he said. "Your strength, intelligence, and courage have left a mark that will not be forgotten." She smiled faintly, understanding the depth of his words. The journey that had begun with fear and uncertainty had led to growth, trust, and respect. She had survived, adapted, and found a place where she could contribute and thrive. And though life would continue to bring challenges, she felt ready to face them, guided by the lessons she had learned and the strength she had gained. As night fell and stars filled the sky, the Comanche woman felt a sense of peace she had not known in years. She had reclaimed her life in a place far from home, building a future on courage, trust, and perseverance. She understood now that even in the darkest moments, hope and determination could lead to a life worth living. The railway tracks, once a symbol of fear, had become a distant memory, a reminder of how far she had come and how strong she had become. In the quiet of the ranch, under the vast, starlit sky, she knew that her journey was far from over, but she was ready. Ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, ready to continue learning and growing, and ready to embrace the life she had fought so hard to create. She had survived the impossible, adapted to a new world, and built a life defined not by fear, but by courage, wisdom, and resilience. And in that moment, standing beside the rancher she had come to respect and trust, the Comanche woman realized that she had not only survived, she had truly lived.